So Congress averted another government shutdown, but not before making such a huge deal out of this whole thing. So let's go ahead and talk about what happened in the whole government shutdown talk and who the real winners are and who the real losers are. Here, check this out, guys.
Congress passing an extension of federal funding for 45 days. President Biden signing the bipartisan bill late Saturday night, just before the midnight deadline. On Sunday, pushing lawmakers to seek a long-term deal quickly.
I strongly urge my Republican friends in Congress not to wait.
But even the short-term bill's path to passage was a rocky one, a bipartisan plan only emerging after Republicans failed on Friday to pass a party line bill. Speaker McCarthy on Saturday shifting course and courting Democratic votes.
There has to be an adult in the room. I am going to govern what is best for this country.
Then, as Republicans rushed the bill to the floor, New York Democrat Jamal Bowman pulled a fire alarm on Capitol Hill, later calling it an accident. Republicans accusing him of attempting to delay the vote and calling for punishment.
It's very dangerous. I don't know what happened.
And the drama doesn't end with final passage. Florida Republican Matt Yates now planning to force a vote to remove McCarthy this week for what he says is a long list of broken promises.
I think we need to rip off the Band-Aid. The one thing everybody has in common is that nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy.
The speaker firing back.
Yes, I'll survive.
Honestly, guys, at this point, it seems like we're just kind of treating symptoms and not resolving the actual problem. What do you think? So I read a quote recently. They say it's from billionaire investor Warren Buffett, but I haven't confirmed it. Either way, it makes a lot of sense. He said he could end the deficit in 5 minutes. You just pass a few laws that say anytime that there's a deficit of more than 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I bet Congress would definitely be tripping over themselves in order to get things done if that were the case. But seriously though, there's something that we need to talk about with the whole government shutdown fight that we just witnessed. Their temporary deal, referred to as this continuing resolution, it just keeps government funding at the current levels until November 17th. The legislation basically kicks the can down the road. Meanwhile, lawmakers try to negotiate a longer term solution. Now, if that sounds like something that they've done before, well, it's because they have. But in the meantime, we can be a little bit relieved for the moment without a possible shutdown looming over the country, which could very well have furloughed hundreds of thousands of federal employees, delayed food assistance programs, SNAP, EBT, tanked the stock market, and a whole lot more. But now let's go ahead and talk about the most important bit, the real winners of this near miss. Millions of Americans. Let's not forget about the silver lining here, guys. We managed to extend government funding. That's a relief for millions of people, including federal workers and families who rely on government benefits. In case of a shutdown, non-essential federal workers would have been on furlough, and the essential ones would have had to keep working without getting paid until the government shutdown was over, at which point they theoretically would have received their back pay. Now, of course, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, also known as WIC. Now, if a shutdown had come down on us, this program, which provides healthy food and baby formula to low-income pregnant women, breastfeeding women, and children, they would have been paused. So thankfully, we managed to avert this shutdown so that people relying on WIC can still count on the support that it provides as a part of our social safety net. The stock market can also actually breathe a sigh of relief when the US government avoids a shutdown. There's a few pretty important reasons why. So first off, these shutdowns can be like throwing a curveball into the economy. Investors get all jittery, and then of course this often leads to wild swings in the stock market. That's because government shutdowns mess with things like government spending, regulations, and even the release of economic data, all stuff that the investors rely on to be able to make decisions. But there's more to it. When the government can't get its own act together and it shuts down, it makes people doubt its ability to handle things. And that's a big deal because businesses and investors, both in the country and overseas, they count on a government to keep the economy stable and to create good environments for growth. So when the government can't do that because of political disputes over money, it really shakes people's confidence in the system. And as you guys can expect, that often translates to not so good reactions in the stock market. The last time that there was talk about a government shutdown, it led to a threat of a credit downgrade. When the government can't agree on its budget and the debt ceiling, it can impact the country's credit worthiness. And so that means that it could become more expensive for the United States government to borrow money. And when Uncle Sam's borrowing costs go up, it can have a ripple effect on interest rates and the overall economy, which is not good news for investors or for me and you. So avoiding a government shutdown isn't just good for us. It's good for the whole global financial scene. And it's not just a US thing either. The US stock market's like the big player in a global game. When it stumbles because of a shutdown, it can cause shockwaves across the international markets. Investors worldwide keep a very close eye on what's happening here, and any kind of hiccup that's caused by a shutdown can cause a ripple effect everywhere else. So yeah, avoiding a government shutdown isn't just good for us, it's good for the whole global financial scene. Now, if you want to stay updated on the latest news and developments from Washington and Wall Street, then look no further, guys. Subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell. And if you guys appreciate the information that I'm sharing with you guys, don't forget to show some love by lighting up the like button. Appreciate you guys a whole bunch. So business leaders and economists have been sounding the alarm about how a government shutdown could wreak havoc on the economy. They talked about things like vast uncertainty, significant disruptions, and hurting confidence. So after Congress finally resolved things at the last minute again, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce said it's a good thing that the grown-ups finally stepped in to avert a shutdown and spared millions of Americans and small businesses from the turmoil that would have been caused. Now they have another 45 days to kind of wrap up this budget, send some crucial funds to support Ukraine in its struggle against the Russian aggression, and also take some steps to boost border security. Are we going to see the same kind of Congress drama in 45 days? Most likely. I mean, this is the US Congress that we're talking about here. They definitely enjoy their time in the spotlight. And that might be why Wall Street had a more muted reaction to this whole thing. US stocks were mostly down on Monday morning, with investors still keeping a very close eye on those rising bond yields and, of course, the Federal Reserve's battle against inflation. Plus, there's already talk of a push to replace Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House and potentially another budget showdown looming around November 17th. But really, just a few weeks away, guys. I guess enjoy the good vibes while they last. At least that's what they're saying. Now, I've been talking to some friends of mine, and they can't help but feel that politicians are a little bit corrupt. Some even say how ashamed they are of what's happening and what our country has become. And to think these lawmakers are in charge of our country? Now, at this point, to many Americans, government dysfunction is the new normal. I mean, am I right, guys? As the nation's capital seemed to be heading toward yet another government shutdown this weekend, well, America didn't exactly appear to be on the edge of its collective seat. I mean, judging by Google and the search trends in the days leading up to the shutdown that didn't happen, Americans seem more curious about who shot Tupac Shakur, or maybe who might win the Golden Bachelor, and who could possibly claim this massive Powerball jackpot. I mean, heck, even National Coffee Day 2023 generated more search results at one point than the whole potential government shutdown. Honestly, those probably aren't signs that the public had a lot of confidence in our nation's leaders miraculously avoiding disaster at the last minute, even though surprisingly they did. So instead, it might just indicate that at this point, America assumes that Washington's always on the brink of chaos because, well, that's just what Washington does these days. I mean, that 11th hour congressional deal just keeping the government open, it's only good till November. Let me know if you guys agree here. It's kind of like America has started to expect crisis as the new normal. Is this the age of disruption, polarization, and insurrection, where a former president's facing 91 felony counts and 4 criminal indictments, a sitting president is dealing with an impeachment inquiry, and a House Speaker might be on the verge of being ousted? The country has somehow grown used to the Capitol being in a perpetual state of dysfunction. Chaos has literally become the new norm. What set this potential shutdown apart from the ones that we've seen before was that it wasn't so much a classic Democrats versus Republican showdown. Instead, it kind of turned into a little bit of a tussle within the Republican Party itself. Speaker Kevin McCarthy lost control of his slim majority, and he was pretty much pushed toward a shutdown by a handful of hard-nosed Republicans who defied him. Now, this twist forced him to reach out to Democrats to avoid this whole mess. Now, in the days leading up to the Saturday midnight deadline, the Biden administration tried to stir up some public opposition to what they were calling the extreme Republican shutdown. They emphasized all the consequences, like how it could cut off food assistance for struggling parents, mess with efforts to combat fentanyl trafficking, slow down disaster recovery, and even stop paychecks for our troops. But here's the thing, guys. Even though Washington was all wrapped up in this whole political game of chicken, there wasn't really a big public uproar. And even with the Wall Street elites who usually fret and panic about a government shutdown messing with the economy, didn't seem all that bothered. And like I said earlier, guys, the financial markets pretty much shrugged off this whole threat. The Dow Jones closed down 1.3% for the week on Friday, and the S&P 500 was down about half a point. Now, the only thing that might change is if a shutdown drags on for a good long while. You know, like if it starts affecting things like food assistance for millions of low-income moms and kids, shutting down national parks, messing with air travel, and leaving more than 3 million government workers, both civilian and military, without a paycheck. That's a problem. It'll take an extreme shutdown when folks really start feeling the pinch, in order for there to be some serious political backlash against these Republican House members playing this risky game. A survey by Monmouth University showed that by a 2-to-1 ratio, voters prefer their representatives to compromise rather than sticking to their principles if it means avoiding a shutdown. By another survey, this one by YouGov, found that 29% of Americans blamed House Republicans for the situation. 14% pointed the finger at House Democrats, and 13% named Biden as the fault. In other words, it's a pretty even split between both parties, with nearly a third of folks considering everyone equally at fault. What do the pollsters say? Well, basically, when you ask the American public if they want to compromise, they say yes. But when you ask them who they will vote for, they stand by their party, believing that it's the other side that's not compromising. So I guess it's all of these things that are happening at the same time. Shutdown, impeachment, criminal trials, internal revolt. Everybody's just basically tuning it all out as noise at this point. Experts talk about a contagion effect. There's no demographic group where the majority of the people think that things are actually going well in the country. Partisans, Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters, they all think that things are pretty much going poorly. People have gotten so used to chaos in Washington that, we've basically just kind of set the bar pretty low for what we're willing to put up with. Our expectations have hit rock bottom, and we've become almost shockingly unfazed by this constant mess up in our government. It's getting pretty tough to figure out just how we can actually fix this and keep our standing in the world. The only way things can start to change is if we start asking more of our leaders, not just by getting angrier, but by actually wanting our country to come together and to be more united. And that's why we have our Financial Freedom Fam, right, guys? Let's stick together so we can at least show Congress and America that there are people who can work together to make our country a better place. You with me, guys?